Hey, I don't know if anyone's here yet, but come in, take your seat. Be careful. Please have a cover on your beverage so you don't spill. Um, we'll be starting momentarily. Thank you for joining us. Uh, we have a lovely crew here that we'll introduce in a moment, but I will start by saying the obligatory weather facts of the day. It is currently 55 degrees in sunny Rochester, New York. I had to look out the window for that. And Celsius, I'm guessing that's like 11 or 12, probably 12 Celsius for those of you who may prefer the metric, the Celsius system. Um, we have some other folks that we're going to introduce in a minute. You can see that they have their names there. I'm going to ask Olga in Santiago, Chile, what the temperature is there right now.
Sure, Bob. I think I can only do Celsius for now. So it's about 20 degrees and it's quite sunny. I'm not sure how much it would be in Fahrenheit. Maybe you could give me a hint.
Uh, it's it's more than 55. I think it's probably like 70 or something. And people in the who are in the audience while you're waiting and have nothing to do, please let us know what the temperature is of your location and let us know your location and who you are and what you do and all that stuff. Holly in
Yep.
North Carolina, what is the
So,
temperature?
not to brag, but our low is higher than your high.
All right, I'm leaving. I don't nope.
It's going to be about 80 here today, but it's low humidity, so it feels really nice and there's a breeze.
Well, that's just not great for me. Thanks.
You're
Uh,
welcome.
Philadelphia, Dr. Verdine.
Yes, I guess it's about mid 70s here in Fahrenheit, and I have no idea.
Wow.
Celsius.
This is the worst.
We're having a pretty good couple of days here this week. It makes me ready to just go outside for a little while.
Finally.
Again, oh, thank you, Dylan. It's 58 in Burlington, Vermont. At least you're still warmer than me.
Nobody told you to live in upstate New York, Bob. It's your own fault.
It is my fault. It's beautiful here during the
You
summer.
know the consequences of
If you're
that.
familiar with the Finger Lakes, they're beautiful, and we are right on Lake Ontario, which is one of the Great Lakes, so to speak. It's a pretty good lake. Great, that's a strong term. I don't know. Um, anyway, Holly, it's my clock says it's 12:01
Yeah, let's go
Eastern
ahead and
time.
get started.
So
So,
uh, I'll let
no, I
you.
was going to say, let's have Olga and Brian introduce themselves. They're here. They're going to moderate the chat. So for those of you who've never used a Zoom webinar before, your videos, your audio is not on. We can bring you on stage if we need to, but we're going to use the chat as our form of communication and interaction. And we have a couple polls at the beginning too we want to share, but Brian and Olga are going to be moderating that and answering all your questions. So Olga, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you so much, Holly. So my name is Olga Kazarina. I'm success partner in the Yellowdig. I come from educational background. I used to work as educational technologist in K-12, and I'm happy to support you in the chat. I will be monitoring that and answering all your questions. I'm going to toss that to Dr. Verdine.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Brian Verdine. I'm our Senior Vice President of Academic Engagement. I've been with Yellowdig for about 7 years now, and I've done a lot of the research on the platform. And most of the things that Bob is going to be talking about today are pretty heavily backed up by that research. So I'm happy to answer questions in the chat if you have any questions about that.
And Holly, who are you?
Oh, hi, I'm Holly. I've been at Yellowdig for about 6 months and I'm the director of growth marketing here. However, I have a similar background to Olga. I was a high school teacher. I'm a formally trained instructional designer. Um, somebody raised their hand, so it distracted me. And I love all things Yellowdig and anything that has to do with teaching and making it better. And so I'm excited for this webinar because Bob's going to do a great job telling you all about the best practices because we are not a typical ed tech company. We are not one where we offer you all these features and we solve all your problems. This is something where we work in partnership with you and in tandem so that you can incorporate best practices that create genuine human connections, authentic conversations, and your students just get to understand each other and feel supported.
Awesome.
So Bob, Do you want me to do the first poll question?
Yeah, sure.
All right, let's do it. Oh, it didn't save it.
Do I need,
Crap.
okay, that makes it harder.
That does make it harder.
Um,
Uh, well, how about in the chat, everybody, and I'll try to get it up. But if you want to tell us if you are using Yellowdig or not, yes or no. So yes if you're using it, no if you're not. I'm
yes,
sure I
yes,
saved this
yes,
earlier.
no, yes, no, yes. Okay, I don't read all those, but anyway, not yet. I like that one, sort of. All right. So while that's going on, why don't I just like start introducing myself and stuff like
Yes,
that?
it's
All
your
right.
floor, Bob. You take over.
So I'm going to get rid of the share for a moment because I want to point out my background here. So I'm Bob Ertischek. I'm Yellowdig's Senior Director of Client Success. I've been with Yellowdig for a little over 5 years now. And but before coming to Yellowdig, I was in higher education. Before the turn of the century, I transitioned from a career in law that I didn't really love to had the opportunity to teach and really enjoyed teaching. So I did that, and then in right at the turn of the century in 2001, it's fun to say turn of the century, by the way. I had a role as a faculty developer, instructional technologist, and at that point, my role was to help instructors put their courses online. And I didn't, I got frustrated in that position because I didn't feel like the tools of the time or the pedagogy or andragogy or learning theory, whatever you want to call it, really created a better student experience. So I went back to teaching, and for over a decade, and in my own classes, I always tried to create a better learning experience. By the way, the room that you're seeing behind here is one of the classrooms I taught, and it wasn't my favorite classroom, but that is an actual classroom that I spent significant time in, and usually there were students in there. It wasn't empty like that. Um, but in my own class, I tried all kinds of experiments to make my learners more engaged, to make their learning deeper, and to get them involved in the conversation. I'm not going to share with you what those were, but they were pretty wacky. In any case, ultimately, I found Yellowdig, and um, I you know, it's what I wish I had had when I was in the classroom. And now my role is to share it with others and to help them understand how to make it work best and how to create really engaging learning spaces, learning communities for you and your students. So I'm going to go back to the slides and share our agenda for today. And we'll get going in just a second here if I can manage to do that properly. That's the hardest part of this, as anyone who knows, is to share screens. Okay. So if life is good, you're seeing that quote again. I think it's a really good quote. It was just from like about a month ago, a student had. We get these all the times, but I thought this one was really good and it frames today really well. Because we're going to be talking about, well, you remember the name of this is discussion board, B-O-R-E-D. That was not a typo, that was on purpose. Because people seem to think, at least most of the conventionalism is that discussion boards are not engaging, that they're boring. And so what we're going to talk about today is how to unlock better learning by elevating social connection. We're going to move beyond that post once, reply twice, and we'll talk about getting real engagement. How to steer the conversation rather than stifle it. Yellowdig has a concept called topics, feature called topics that are really going to help you create those good conversations and get beyond those prompts. And then how about you? You as the instructor, what do you do here? What's your role in here? And instead of being Darth Grader, you're going to be the guide on the side. So we'll just move on beyond that. And so what is Yellowdig? Yellowdig is a learning community platform, plain and simple. Instead of that discussion board, it is a single scrolling feed that resembles, social media, but it isn't social media. It's a closed environment for you and your learners. It's a safe space, and you can see that scrolling feed is compelling. It keeps people reading, something that you won't find in those discussion boards. All right. So, by the way, again, if you have any questions, there is a chat. I believe there's also a Q&A. If that's not exposed, you can use the chat. and my colleagues Brian and Olya and Holly will answer those questions, work to answer those questions. I'm trying to make this go to the next
Can
slide.
I pop on
Oops.
here for a second?
Yeah, sure.
I just want to kind of tell a little bit about my story with Yellowdig because I came to this company using Yellowdig. I mean, I'm not an OG user. I'm kind of an OG because I use Classic. But I just want to say one of the things that was really bothering me with discussion boards is the connections I was having with my students and the like the endless grading or the I agree, disagree. And nothing was seeming to connect to the content that we were sharing, and nothing was connecting from the outside, like what's happening in the real world. So I was on the search for a tool. I found Yellowdig. I implemented it right away in my classes. It took a little bit for students to get used to it and myself. And what I found is that at the end of the semester, everybody felt supported. And you can really tell by the end of the semester, and I say this all the time in chats with people, if your class feels like a community. You can tell when it's disconjointed or disconnected, and you can tell when everybody's connected. There's a certain feeling there. So Yellowdig really changed my perspective on how to interact with my students and allow them to generate conversations instead of just those boring discussion boards that are just like checklist items. So I just want to say Yellowdig did me, I really love using it. I'm using it in my classes now. So I continue to be a advocate.
Yeah, and just to go on for that, that was what I was trying to create, and I think I did a pretty good job with what I had at the time. I'm still friends and with many of my students, and I know that they all interact. In fact, I have a couple of marriages of students under my belt, so to speak, from there. Anyway, we'll get back to all of that. But one thing I want you to know about Yellowdig is the four ways it can improve your course. We have a point system. That point system is not there to assess students, but rather it is there to motivate students to come into the community and to create better conversations. We have a saying at Yellowdig, come for the points, stay for the conversation. And what that means is while the students have a point goal, they often exceed that point goal because they're finding value and a sense of belonging in the community. That relevance. We want students talking about the things that we need them to talk about, our course concepts. And those topics that we're going to talk about for some time are going to create that course relevance without the need for those prompts. The facilitator presence, your presence, as we mentioned before, is not to be Darth Grader. It's to be a citizen of the community. And I'm going to show you how you can do that and how you can maximize your interaction in the community, and maybe even have a decent time, enjoy yourself there. And there's a ton of data in Yellowdig that can inform your teaching. So let's move on and talk about a little bit of the educational background, the pedagogical, andragogical, whatever you want to call it, background of what we're trying to do. And what you're looking at here is a diagram that represents the community of inquiry framework, which says there are three things that learners need to succeed. And those three things are, first of all, the teaching presence, that's you or me in front of our classes, providing structure, process, information, all that kind of thing. The cognitive presence, the idea that your students are spending time thinking about all this stuff, that they're reading the textbook, they're doing an assignment, they're in class listening, or they're participating in some other way or doing a project with their peers. And then finally, there's this idea of the social presence, the idea that your learners bring something to the table, that they have experiences that relate to these course concepts, that they see things happening in the world that they can connect to the course concepts, that they have questions for each other and they have answers for each other. And the reality is that the teaching presence and the cognitive presence are pretty much in every part of the course, but that social presence is oftentimes either assumed to be there or it's just or ignored altogether. I'm just going to give two quick examples here. So we're all in a Zoom right now, a synchronous class, so to speak. It could be a face-to-face class. It could be an online class with Zoom. And, we figure this is the space where we're all virtually or physically together. So that must be the social presence. But the reality is, well, in this case, none of you have your cameras on. Well, that's because of the way this is designed, but we've all been in those Zoom meetings where half the people have their cameras off or our students have their cameras off. In a face-to-face class, you might have those students who come in at the last minute, the people in the front row never talk to the people in the back row. And more importantly than that, in the 50 minutes, 3 times a week you have in a live class or whatever your cadence is, you are deciding on all the conversations. You're choosing who can talk, what they can talk about, how long they can talk, and there really isn't much opportunity beyond that for every student to go ahead and get what they might need. And in that discussion board, which has been around forever since I started doing this 20 plus years ago, that typical social assignment. Let's break that down and discuss about, what's good about it. And I don't know if there's too much that's good about it, honestly, and what might not be so good. So this graph, this chart, this diagram, whatever you want to call it, represents that. And let me talk about exactly what I'm talking about, that social assignment. The idea that you, as the instructor, every Monday morning at 9 a.m., pop a prompt down for all of your students to answer, and then they must reply to that. They must reply to two of their students, all by Sunday night at midnight. All right. And so there's a few things that are happening here. First of all, students view this as an assignment with a due date. It's you put it out there Monday morning, but it is due Sunday at midnight. So everyone has things to do. It's due Sunday night. So when do you do it? Do you do it right away? Probably not. You got other things going on. I'm talking about your students. So they wait, they procrastinate. That procrastination is built in. You might have this go-getter student who comes out there, but who's interacting with them? Who's replying to them? Probably not too many people at first, all right, because they're coming back. Beyond that, there's a few other things here that I want to talk about. So in this supposedly social thing that's supposed to be happening here, who are your students writing to? Are they writing to each other to have a conversation, or is there something else going on? Who are they writing to? I'm going to argue that they're writing to you for a grade. And then those replies that they have to give to each other usually are check the box type replies. How many people here have heard, I agree, or great post, or well said? And those students are usually just replying to the two posts immediately above them and getting out of town. They want to complete the assignment. This is a check the box thing. There is no real conversation happening here. And I can pretty much guarantee you that there's not a ton of reading beyond the two posts that they had to read above them that they're commenting on. And then finally, we have this guy here, the last person to get in, that procrastinator. And maybe, why is this person procrastinating? Well, we already discussed that the assignment comes late, so they're coming to do it when it's due, or maybe life got in the way or whatever. But who's replying to their post? No one. That's right. There's nobody there who's going to reply.
Silence. Silence.
Silence. Exactly.
Nobody.
And at the end of the week, what's left? Well, what's left is that you get to grade all these wonderful responses to the same prompt, and grade all these responses to these things that your students did. And, I spent 12 parts of 12 summers scoring AP US government exams. So over the course of 8 or 9 days, I would score about 5,000 essays, all written to one prompt. And that was, well, that was different. It's mind numbing. And I know what that's like. And as the weeks go on, you've got that go-getter who starts realizing nobody is responding to what I have to say, and they begin procrastinating. And at the end, really what you have is just a public way to submit a written assignment to the instructor for a grade rather than any kind of conversation going on. And what we're going to talk about today is how to change that. In Yellowdig, this slide represents sort of the way we envision a community and the way that many of our communities are. And you'll notice it's very different. All the icons are the same, but the placement is all very different. So what we
Hey,
have at first,
Bob,
yes,
I found a polling question. Can we do that before you jump into all this?
I suppose.
Okay. It's about discussion boards. So,
Spelled how? By the way, we got some comments. I heard some feedback that, oh, you made a typo in the
oh, no, we got, yeah, play on words. Yeah. So
All
I want
right.
to know from participants who are currently in the conversation right now, are your discussion boards a post once, respond twice assignment in your class? So far, Bob, 75% of participants say yes.
Ah, okay.
So
Well, and by the way,
64%.
towards the end, if there's time for questions, if you have questions about what to do with that piece of assessment, we can talk about that a little bit too. But let's get a little bit further in here, and Holly, keep us up to date on those poll numbers.
I will.
All right. So in the Yellowdig community, rather than that weekly prompt that the instructor does, what does the instructors do? First of all, the instructor is going to tell people this isn't a discussion board. So they're going to set expectations at the start. And I'm going to go much deeper into that in just a minute. But so from there, the instructor is a citizen in the community. Doesn't have to start every conversation. Students can start conversations. They can bring in an experience that they had related to a concept that you're talking about, or they can bring in some sort of article that that they came across in the news or something, and connect the concept that you're talking about with an actual event in the world. Take that concept and make it real for them, or they can ask a question. And because of the point system I mentioned before, those other students are going to get points for trying to answer that question and maybe even save you a little bit of work here. And we'll talk a lot more about that when we get to the instructor presence. A couple other things about Yellowdig. As I mentioned, it's a single scrolling feed, sort of like LinkedIn or Facebook or anything else that you do like that. So when somebody comes in, there's not just one conversation. There can be multiple conversations going on in every week. We just don't have one topic to discuss. We can have unlimited topics, unlimited concepts, unlimited conversations that are going on in this concept related to the course concepts. And we'll talk about how that works in just a minute. In addition, these little dots here indicate that these conversations don't have to end. If we're talking about something in week 2, it becomes important again in week 5. It's very easy to jump back into that conversation or go back and study in those conversations. Those discussion board, nobody ever goes back to look at anything. Here, this is a valuable tool to get back into those conversations, to make those new connections, and to sort of be able to study even as far as that goes. So a Yellowdig community is a very different space than a discussion board. And notice, we're very careful to use the word conversation rather than discussion. And that's something that you're going to need to frame for your students as well. And I think that makes a big difference. Oops. Trying to make the slide switch and it's not cooperating. There we go. So what did we learn here basically? Traditional prompted discussion boards limit conversation. They allow students to only talk about the one thing that you wanted to talk about, and when that conversation is over, that conversation is over forever. In a Yellowdig community, we encourage more types of conversations about the course concepts you want to have. Second thing, in that discussion board, you are Darth Grader. You are the evil empire who is judging everything that students say to give them a grade. And then you have to actually go ahead and do that grading, which was one of my least favorite parts of my role as an instructor, versus being a helpful guide, somebody who's in there helping out, sharing your own experiences, and being part of the community. So ultimately, Yellowdig works best as a learning community and not as a prompted discussion board. If there's one thing that comes away from this today, I hope it's that some of you will consider moving away from those prompts because they really do not create that conversation that you want. You can assess your students in other ways, but those discussion boards are not discussions. They're just finishing the assignment. All right, so let's get to how you get started here. By the way, before I do any of this, uh, are there things in the chat? Or everyone getting answered and all that kind of thing?
Everything's well taken care of. And we did have a question. We get to see what it does? I
Yeah.
said
What do you
I said
think?
coming. I think we'll let them see it.
All
Coming
right.
soon. Coming
All
soon.
right. Yep. We're going to get into that in just a minute. So, in fact, you know what? I'll show you really quickly right now, a little bit.
Wow, that was a big change.
So, so this is Yellowdig. If you haven't seen it before, it is, like I said, a single scrolling feed that resembles social media. Your students are going to, I mean, one of the things I love about it is that scrolling feed. Students are just compelled to keep going. I know I do. I mean, I just keep going and keep going and keep going. And like social media, it has great features as far as video, audio, images. You can put up a PDF and it's navigable in here. The point system, we'll talk perhaps a little bit more about, is represented here as well. And of course, there's some, a rich data for all of you to view. But while it looks like social media, it is not social media. It is a closed environment that is going to be a place where you and your students are not going to get those bad behaviors from social media that everyone's scared about, and because it's not open to the public. It's just your class, and if you're present, you're not going to get those behaviors in there. All right, I'm going to shift back to the slides, hopefully, and talk about how you get started. One of the most important things in this learning community, um, I would put it in the top two of most important things, is setting expectations with your learners, because your learners, especially if they've had you before and you've done it a different way, are used to that discussion board. They're used to that post once, comment twice. So we need to tell them something different. We need to show them what's different. And so what you need to do when you're starting when you're starting your Yellowdig community is to let them know what's going on here. Tell them what kind of, what the purpose of this community is, what kind of conversations you're expecting from them, what they expect, what they should expect from you, let them know what you're going to be doing in that community. Give them an example of what you want them to do, sort of model the behavior you want to see. And then finally, and most importantly, follow through with your actions. Now, we highly recommend you can give any kind of personal introduction you want, but what we're talking about here is not a personal introduction. This is an introduction to the community. So I'm going to bore you for 90 seconds with the sort of the model. We can give you a script for this too. Hi, everybody. I'm Bob Ernstchak. I'm going to be your instructor for this course, and I'm excited to go on this journey together. I want to tell you a little bit about what we're doing here in Yellowdig. Yellowdig is a learning community where where you and I can have conversations about the various course concepts. You have the ability to start your own conversations related to those course concepts represented by topics in the community. You can share your experiences or what you see happening in the world related to those concepts. You can certainly ask your peers a question rather than sending an email to me. And for all the students, please feel free to try to answer your peers' questions. Remember, in Yellowdig, you're going to get points for doing that. So I appreciate that. And I'll let you know which is the best answer so that you can have your be directed right to that. As for me, I'm going to be another citizen of this community. I may occasionally post something that I found interesting. I'll definitely be commenting on some of the conversations that you're having, and I'll also be awarding point-bearing accolades. But don't expect me to read and comment on everything in the community. As for you, I want you to make sure that you're earning your points towards your Yellowdig grade. It's part of your grade. I also would like to encourage you to have good conversations with your peers about this stuff, and let's learn together and maybe even have a little bit of fun. See you in Yellowdig. So 90
How fun
seconds.
is it to watch yourself, or how
I hate that.
torturous?
Hate it so much.
I can see it in your face, Bob.
But the point here is that you've set the tone. You've explained to them what to do. There's going to be less ambiguity. They're not going to be expecting to do the same old thing, and you're going to model that behavior a little bit for them. One thing you can do in Yellowdig is you can pin a post to the top of the feed, and I would suggest that when you start your community, you do that as well. You can create a personal introduction video separately. By the way, you don't have to use video. But the thing about video, especially a brief video like 90 seconds, is your students will watch it. And by the way, in Yellowdig, those videos are automatically captioned. You can edit the captions if you need to. And they're really great. But the bottom line is you need to let your students know that things are different here, that this is a space for them. They have agency, that they, exactly what they should do and what you're going to do. And by the way, it's not hard. Yellowdig has a built-in video tool. I'll show it to you actually. You give it a topic, and I click right here, record, and now I've got this thing. I'm in front of a green screen. I hit 3, 2, 1. Hey, everybody, how's it going? Blah, blah, blah. Right. And I forget what I'm going to say. I can hit pause and come back to it without having to start over again. But basically, this is a really easy way to let your students know what's going on. The other benefit of doing this video here is maybe they'll realize that they can use videos too, and that'll make the page, the whole feed, a little bit more engaging. Walls of text, we can do better. Let's put it that way. All right.
Hey, Bob.
Yes, please, Holly.
Somebody's asking in the chat a very interesting question.
Yeah.
What is the meaning of Yellowdig? Is there any reason for the color code?
You know what, Holly?
Why not green dig?
Holly, first of all, I'll answer that question. But before I do, I want people to put some guesses in the chat.
Put some guesses in the chat. Why would we name it Yellowdig?
All right. So let's get back to that in like a few minutes. All right. Let's see what we get. Okay. Just for fun. All right. Am my screen still being shared?
Yes, it is.
All right. All right. No, stop that. Okay. So the next thing we want to talk, wow, okay, they're fun comments. Anyway, pick out the best ones and share them with me in a minute. The next thing we want to do, and actually this is something that we'd probably do before, this is what we do before when you're setting up your community in the first place, is to create topics. We could have the best conversations in the world, but if they're about, what your students saw on Netflix or where to go for pizza or the latest TikTok videos or whatever, by the way, that's fine. Maybe that's not what we want them talking about. We want them talking about our course concepts, right? So in Yellowdig, we create those topics to represent those concepts, and those concepts shape the conversations that your students have, right? Because every single post that somebody creates in Yellowdig requires one of these topics. Now, we're not going to use week 1, week 2, week 3, chapter 4, concept 7. We're going to use the actual names of these things. Why? Because it does so much for your community. These concepts are going to be based on those main things that you want your students to have. Just to go back here, this is from a Intro to American Government course. So the concepts I want my students talking about are things like federalism, Congress, elections, Constitution, courts, executive branch, political parties. And so that's the way I would name my topics. Your course is something else. So if you want in the chat, in addition to these answers about Yellowdig, think about your course and what some of the key concepts might be, and go ahead and put some of those that you might use in your class, in your community, in Yellowdig. All right, Holly, I'm going to get back into topics in a minute, but what do we got? What's good?
Because diggers are yellow. Yellow equals positivity, digging deeper into happier things. Yellowdig makes me think of construction. It helps build community.
Ooh, I like that one.
Yeah, I like that one too. Cracking the egg, yellow inside, dig into it. Oh my gosh, these are so good.
But should we share the real story?
Yes, we should.
Okay. So Yellowdig, yellow is the color of enlightenment or intellect, I believe in some Eastern cultures. And digging is what you do with that knowledge. So you're digging for enlightenment, for information. So basically you're digging for knowledge and enlightenment. So that's where Yellowdig, the name, comes from. Um, Anyway, going back to the topics here, and again, love to see if some of you have some ideas for topics that you might use in your courses, in your Yellowdig communities. Let's talk about what these topics do. So first of all, again, they're required. You can't submit a post without choosing that topic, right? And so what does that mean? It means that ultimately your students have to think a little bit about what they're bringing into the community and where it fits, right? I could just bring it, if I'm talking about elections in my class and I pretend I'm a student, I might just bring an article in. If I don't put elections to it, I don't indicate to anybody that I know why it's important to the class or you know, where it belongs in the class. Also, it's going to make it harder to find that as well. So now I choose the topic, you know, related to whatever the thing that I'm posting is. Okay. But now as you scroll through the feed, every single post has that topic. And that guides me as somebody scrolling through the feed to what I want to engage with, right? Oh yeah, I am studying emotional intelligence. We have a test this week. I want to read that one. Okay, I'm going to read that comment, and because of the scrolling feed, I'm going to keep going. And now I realize, oh, you know what? There was something that came up on thinking, learning, language, and intelligence. I can't quite remember what it is. I'm just going to click this, and I'm going to be able to narrow my feed to show me only those conversations that relate to thinking language intelligence. So Yellowdig has the ability with these topics to get your students into sort of studying mode or to come back to that conversation and continue a conversation. We had a conversation 3 weeks ago about thinking and intelligence. I saw something in the world happening to that, and I know that Ellie talked about it here, so I'm just going to jump into this conversation and add something new to it related to that. Or I want to study thinking language and intelligence. I'm just going to be able to do that right from here. So those topics, they give you context. They give you the ability to get back into those conversations. Another thing that we do with these topics is we track them, and this is for you as instructors. So I'm going to hit community health here, and I'm going to click topics. And now I can see, what are my students spending time on? Which topics are they spending time on? Which ones do I need them to spend a little more time on? And I can see this in a global fashion, and I can also see it individually. So I can tell what each student has. All right. So now what can I do with this data? Okay, well, stress, help, and psychology. They haven't spent a lot of time on that. That's something that's coming up next week. I want to spend a little more time on that. I want to focus on it a little bit more. So what do? I go into my topic settings and take a sip of water, excuse me. By the way, you don't have to take the sip of water, right? And so I look for that topic in this list. And of course, I'd have to remember what it was. I can't remember what I said, but let's say it was behavioral psychology. I simply drag it to the top. Now, mental health was at the top before. And I don't want that to be as important this time. I'm going to move it down here a little bit. They can still engage with it. And I'm going to go back to the community. What we're going to see now, if things are working as they should, when I click create, when your students click create, what is at the top? Instead of mental health, now it's behavioral psychology, and mental health is further down. So I've signaled to my students, hey, this is the main thing that we're talking about now. So I'd like you to, you know, spend a little time on that. You can still get back to any of these conversations if you want. But you know, this one is going to be top of mind. And I'm signaling that simply by just changing the order of those topics. You might have seen that Socrates here has a sort of an outline here. That means it's a no point topic. They can still engage in it, but they're not going to get points for that. So I can sort of wean them off of that topic a little bit if I want to. And these topics are so easy to use, assuming you know how to type. All you got to do is type them in. And this is your way to get beyond those prompts. Instead of giving them something specific that they have to answer, that they have no agency to go any further, here instead we're saying you have the ability to bring in a question that you have about this, or an experience that you have related to mental health, or emotional intelligence or something like that. And what you're going to find is that your students are going to do that. And you're going to probably learn a few things from them. You're going to have new examples that you can use in future sessions because you're getting not the same old, same old. You're getting some new things, some new ways of looking at it, different perspectives. So these topics are really valuable and really easy to manage. You can change the color, you can make it disabled, meaning that people can still find those conversations, but they can't start a new one with that. And again, the point earning disabled as well. And one topic that I want to talk about here real quickly is the question topic. The question topic you see here is a no point topic, the idea being that when your students have a question, they can use this topic in addition to the point bearing topic that relates to the course concept so that it's identified as a question and you know what the question is about. And that's valuable both to you and because you can filter by question to go in and review all the answers that students have had. And it's valuable to the students because they know what the question is about and whether they feel like they want to try to answer it or not or get that information. All right. So I'm going to move on now uh, to your role in the community. Whoops, I have to get there. Establishing that impactful instructor presence. So what do you do in this community? We already talked about you setting expectations and creating the topics. So you're going to be doing that. But once the community is going, what should you do? Well, first of all, should be an active part of your course, whether it's synchronous or asynchronous, live, in person, whatever. Yellowdig can be a part of your course that bridges all of those pieces. All right. So in other words, if you're in your live class and there was a really good conversation that relates to something you're talking about, bring it up in class. Show that conversation. Show something from that conversation that you want to highlight. On the other side, if you're having a conversation in your live class and time runs out, okay, we have to move on next class. Well, no, you don't. Yellowdig is available for people to share more about it, to ask more questions, to get their own perspective. When I was teaching, I had students all the time who, for whatever reason, did not want to, speak in class. Maybe the English was their second language. Maybe they just needed more time to process. And so it was hard to get anything out of them. And it was important that we did because it helps what your students are thinking and where they are. So this is an opportunity for those students to have the ability to contribute in a way that they wouldn't have had with just that live class. And in Yellowdig, you can also take individual links from any particular conversation and share them with your students. So I can click copy permalink and put it in an email or something and say, this is something I want you to look at or what have you. You can also do things like, I know that Brian had something he asked me a question about this after class at one point. Somebody else has commented on it, and I'm just going to go and mention him to bring him into this conversation and say, hey, you mentioned this before. What are your thoughts? So there is a lot going on there that you can do to make sure that Yellowdig isn't a sideshow. The second thing, modeling behavior for students, right? So again, going along with those setting expectations, one thing you're going to want to do is give them an example of what you're looking at. So when you're starting the community, you might want to bring in an experience that you had to talk about it related to a course concept, or something in the world that's happening that's related to a course concept. So you do that, and they'll say, oh, this is what my instructor is looking for. Okay. One of the most important tips, and if I'm not mistaken, I think Brian is addressing it in the chat, is commenting rather than posting. Prioritize continuing and extending conversations rather than you being the one who starts every conversation. If you're the one starting every conversation, students are going to get used to that and they're not going to start conversations. So instead, what you should do is go in, the way that we talk to instructors about being in the community and reading the community and being involved in it is not to go in for 3 hours a week at the end of every week and read everything and go from there. Instead, grab your cup of whatever, this happens to be water, in the morning or in the evening, and grab Yellowdig and scroll through it like you would scroll through social media and engage where you want to engage. You know, if you see a great conversation going on, but it might be on the wrong track slightly, or a student hasn't gotten it quite right, that's your opportunity to go in there and comment and say, hey, this is a really good start, but I want to direct you towards this. Or that's an interesting perspective, but have you considered this? And you could even at mention a student there or all of the students to get them involved in that conversation, to extend that, to go deeper than the conversations you might have been having, the discussions that you had had before. Another thing in Yellowdig that you can do is add accolades. These are a great tool for you as an instructor and can save you time and also really create a resource for your students. So these are accolades. These little badges that you see here, you can add one of these. And by the way, only you, we call you community owners or facilitators, depending if you have TAs or whatever, only you can add these. Students can't add these. But these accolades are badges that are point bearing. And you can customize them. We have a default set that you can use as well. And with 2 clicks, you can identify something as being important to the community. And when you do that, a bunch of things happen. Okay. First thing that happens is when you give an accolade or you comment on a post, that post and the whole conversation is going to go to the top, back to the top of the feed. So that'll call people's attention to it. Obviously, these accolades are also, they appear at the top of the post or the top of the comment where they were given. So people realize that is something that the instructor wants me to look at. In addition to that, it shows up here for one-click access to all the accoladed items in the accolade widget. So if I'm a student and I want to, find out about something that happened, or a particular thing, I'm going to know that these are the important conversations that my instructor wanted me to look at. And just a quick thought about how many of these you should give, right? So personally, accolades, they act as a bit of a reward, so students love to get them. But I think of them primarily as a way for you to spotlight those important conversations. I worry less about who I'm giving them to, rather what I'm giving them for. I want to use them to direct my students to the things that they need to see, whether it's the kind of post and comment that I'm rewarding because it's the kind of conversation I want to have, or whether it's the specific content or something like that. And I want to give you 2 quick examples of accolades that are really powerful tools for you to extend those conversations, to get more interaction from your students. Holly, do you have something? I see you just.
Yeah, I just want to say we got about 15 minutes left.
Yep, great.
So we're going to stop around 12:55
Okay,
for
and then I'll
questions.
get lunch or something. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds
So I want to point out 2 accolades. The first one is this one right here, the verified response. Okay. And ultimately, what that means is that this is something that you, of the instructor, has said is an answer that they can rely on. So when we talked about telling your learners to ask all of their course questions in Yellowdig rather than sending you an email for each of their questions, I used to get 20 questions, all the same question in email, and I much rather would have had my students take a chance at answering them themselves. So if you tell your students, put all of your course questions in Yellowdig rather than sending me an email for them, and then you tell them, go ahead and try to answer your peers' questions, what are you doing? Well, the first thing is on those questions about course concepts, you're giving all the other students an opportunity to use that information to process what they've learned and try to communicate it to their peers. So when they're answering the question instead of you, they have that opportunity to try to communicate that answer correctly to their peers. They might get it right, they might not, but they've taken that chance and they've tried to do it, and they're going to get a little reward in the points that they get for doing that. So that's going to encourage them to do that. You've also saved yourself time because you don't have to answer every question yourself. Now, here comes the issue though, right? So let's say a student asks a question about a course concept, 14 students answer the question. They try to give an answer, okay? Well, your students still want to know, okay, that's great, 14 people answered, but which is the answer I should rely on? Well, you can identify that answer with 2 clicks, okay? So you give the verified response accolade, as I showed, with 2 clicks, and everyone now sees this is the answer that I should rely on. And just like those topics, if I were to click on the verified response accolade, I'm going to get my feed narrowed to show me only those comments with the verified response accolade. So I've got basically an instant study guide. And I can filter it down. I only want to see the ones on a particular topic or something like that. But basically, this is a way for you to offload some of that important work to your students, give them an experience that they wouldn't have otherwise, and still make sure that they're getting the right information. Um, by the way, if no students give the right information, if you've given them a day or two or whatever to answer the question and nobody comes up with the right thing, that's your opportunity to comment on it. And then go ahead and give yourself that verified response accolade so that they know that that's the one that you're looking for. I would also add that we don't like to give out accolades like candy. We consider that you should give them out judiciously so that people don't come to expect them, that they mean something, that they're valuable. So, that's really your role in the community is to be a member of that community, to encourage your students to extend their conversations. You can do a poll occasionally. I'm not telling you never to post. I'm just saying don't go in and post every morning, every Monday morning, and ask your students to answer something. Okay. The other thing I would mention is that when you post, if you post, encourage your students to answer in their, or to follow up on what you'd said in their own post rather than replying to you. The point system is designed, you get points too, but you'll want to make sure that they're maximizing their points rather than giving them to you. All right, so I know we have 10 minutes left. Oh, I wanted to also talk about bringing students back to the community real quick.
Okay.
So, yeah, just sorry. So, I sort of addressed it before, but I think it's really important. Yellowdig isn't a sideshow. If you want it to be a successful community and you want to really be able to help your students integrate it into those other parts of your course, remind them about Yellowdig. They have their points that they have to earn, but you can also share a permalink like I showed before to to direct them to a particular post or to remind them about a particular conversation simply by grabbing that and the link will be shared or by mentioning it in your live class or what have you. All right, Holly, where were you going to go?
I was gonna see if anybody had any specific questions that we have not answered so far. Bob, you did an amazing job. I always learn something new when I
I,
listen to your
people,
webinars.
yeah.
Um, so I want to see if there's any questions in the chat. We've answered a few things about, Brian's put in things about making, not making accolades transactional. Um, also
I
too,
see a
they,
question here from Dell Rounds about, so this is great, but how do I actually set up the Yellowdig to start up? Can you give me a link to a tutorial? Yeah, we
yeah,
can. I don't know if you already did that.
I did. I already gave you a link, and Olga has already reached out and is going to follow up with Dell so that we can set up something if we
I
need to do something synchronously. So I love it.
want to point out specifically the instructor and designer certification course that we have. I'm not sure if that was linked in that, but this course is a short self-guided course, take you about an hour to finish at your own pace. You can come back to it. And highly recommend it. We know that people who take this course end up with better communities from the perspective of the data that we see. Um, so I encourage you to check it out. What else? Anything else?
I just put in the chat if they want to sign up for a 15-minute chat with us and, no strings attached, anything. Just want to learn more about Yellowdig, or if you're using Yellowdig, you need a quick refresher. We're happy to have that conversation with you. Um, so that's pretty much it. Just making sure that we answered everybody's questions before we let you go about your day. And any last pieces of advice from Bob?
Yeah, I mentioned before that setting expectations. I mean, I think topic design is easy. It needs to be part of the entire course. You need to make sure that, Yellowdig isn't just a bolt on to what you're doing. So you design your topics intentionally related to those course concepts. You come back in them. But really, if you're going to start one of these communities, if you're going to start any kind of learning community, I think one of the most important things you really have to do is just communicate to your students what you're doing and then follow through and do that. That's what I say. And have fun with it. You will. You'll have fun with it. Holly, did you have fun with it?
Oh yeah, I loved it. Absolutely loved it.
Yeah, I wish
It
I'd
was it felt so much better to be like a part of the community than being the person telling
And
people
I
what to
will
do.
mention that all the people on the success team have academic backgrounds. When we're talking to you, we like to think that we're talking your language. We're not just tech vendors. We are actually academics, teachers, instructional designers, and we consider ourselves consultants. And we love to work with you to help you set these things up or get great results out of them.
But yeah, all the things are coming into the chat. Some of the links, we will share everything out post webinar. You get a recording. We're also going to share with you an ed tech rubric from a previous webinar that helps you identify ed techs as, are they good for our institution or not good for our institution? It's a free resource for you. So you can use that with Yellowdig if you want to evaluate at your own institution if you should be using Yellowdig. And we're biased and we all say that you should be using Yellowdig. And we created the rubric, so we used it. We'll share out with you so that you have access to that resource if you're looking into other tech tools as well.
Thanks so much for everyone for spending some time with us today. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much, Bob, and everybody that Brian and Olga for supporting the chat.
Absolutely.
Don't forget, if you want to sign up, you can sign up for that 15-minute chat and you get to talk to me, so it'll be fun. Maybe I'll bring Bob.
Sure, that'd be great. All right, everybody. Thanks again. Thanks for coming. If you
Thank
have any last
you.
questions, feel free we'll be here for a minute or two, so you can feel free to ask any more questions if you want, or enjoy your day.